Hey everybody, what is going on? Sorry, there'll be a little bit of delay at the beginning as there always is. Let me scoot. Okay, perfect. Hey y'all, how you doing? Welcome. It's the Monster Workshop. It's Thursday. This is week 2 of our Monster Workshop, and I'm so excited to be jumping back in. How is everybody doing? I slept in crazy today. I was out late last night with a friend of mine, friend of the show, Cody Bushy, hanging out. He's headed to Europe this weekend, and so I was just hanging out with him before he took his trip. And oops, I'm on the wrong page. We should be on this page. And yeah, I'm just here, y'all. Ready to talk about basilisks. I had a great time last week talking about the banshee. And this week, I'm excited to talk about this the new monster, the next monster on our list of bee monsters, which is the basilisk. If you haven't checked out the last week's video, check it out. We kind of break down the banshee and how we think it could be improved and ways we could change it. And now, if you go to our Patreon, you can see the redesigned banshee is available as a perk that we posted on Sunday. So yeah, we're going to do the same thing with the basilisk today. We're going to go through its three kind of problems that I have with it and ways we can make it better. This video is, of course, sponsored by Monster of the Week, the podcast that I am currently working on, where every week we take a monster and we kind of dissect it and talk about it in detail. It's kind of a companion piece to that, where taking the 3 problems that we talk about, we try to implement those improvements here on the stream, so that way it is ready for people to consume on Sunday. So yeah, let's see. We're going to talk about the basilisk a little bit, but if you enjoy this kind of conversation and this sort of discussion, please feel free to check out the podcast. There is a link directly above me, and there should be a link directly below me as well in the description. So I'm going to crack open the monster manual here and look at the basilisk a little bit, but we're going to talk about the main kind of problems I have with the design. Now, I should say, I feel like this is like worth mentioning, that like the thing about it is that I think most of the monsters 5th edition are very well designed. I'm not here necessarily to, overly harsh on their design. They have to kind of balance a lot of these different things. And I think the 5th edition does a great job in a lot of cases of combining old lore and old mechanics into new and interesting monsters. So I'm not here to rag on that. This stream ends up looking a lot like criticism. I think it's fair criticism for the most part. You know, we're not necessarily out to get wizards or anything like that in their monster design, but, you know, they're not perfect either. The Basilisk, then, is an example of a monster that I think more or less works pretty well. They're not like a lot of huge, glaring things that I would change in the design, but we'll kind of talk about the things that I'm not as wild about and see if we can find solutions for them. So, starting right off, the first problem we have here is that I feel like the Basilisk, if you look at it, right, it's a CR3 monstrosity. It's got dark vision, you know, it's got good strength, decent con, and then kind of shitty everything else. It's got its Petrifying Gaze ability, which is kind of like a, you know, a little novella of an ability there. It's a big, complicated power, so it takes a lot of space, and that makes sense. And then it's got a bite that deals about 4d6 damage, which, you know, pretty serious at CR3, about half of which is piercing and half of which is poison. So obviously the Basilisk is all kind of based around the Petrifying Gaze. That's its big power, and that's where a lot of its, you know, its real estate in terms of being a monster goes, right? If its stat block has to be a certain size, the Basilisk spends most of it on the Petrifying Gaze. But I think a downside of that is that if it's all focused on the gaze, and the bite kind of as an afterthought, that like the Basilisk itself as a monster is relatively boring to run, right? Like every round has some excitement to it because you kind of have to make a decision about whether or not you're looking at the Basilisk or not. But I feel like most players are going to avert their gaze. Maybe they would risk looking at it once or twice to avoid getting disadvantage on attack rolls. But for the most part, the Basilisk is pretty one-dimensional in terms of monster design. So what I would want to do would be to give the Basilisk a little bit more to do on its turn. It's got a low move speed, right? Only moving about 20 feet around. And it's got this bite attack, and so it's got to kind of hustle its way across the field over to you and bite you. It's doing stuff on your turn, which I think is one of the best designs of 5th edition, that the gaze attack isn't an action the Basilisk takes, but it's like a passive aura almost. All creatures within 30 feet of it have to make this saving throw. So that really helps with the action economy because it feels like the Basilisk is threatening you every single round that you were engaged with it. But if you get outside of that 30-foot radius, all of a sudden it's not so severe, right? It really punishes melee characters, but encourages other people like wizards and rogues and rangers to keep their distance, which isn't bad. It's just that's the way the monster is designed. So my instinct then would be to make the monster a little bit more fun to run in combat, right? To kind of like incentivize some of these, to make it have a lot more. I was going to say more bite, a lot more oomph in some of its attacks. So my solution then is to give it multi-attack, right? The classic monster ability. And I was thinking initially about claws because the art for the Basilisk depicts them as being 8-legged. But at the same time, like, everything's got bite and claws, right? It's very overdone, I feel like. You see it all the time. And the Basilisk, as depicted here in the 5th edition monster manual, has kind of a stegosaurus thing going on, right? Where it's got kind of spines all down its body. So my thought was maybe you give it a tail swipe, right? A little bit more unique, a little bit more interesting, even just from a flavor perspective, right, of like what it's doing. If it's got the bite on one end and the tail on the other end. And then my thought was, and we'll talk a little bit more about the poison in just a second, giving it some kind of a rechargeable ranged attack, a way to deal with people who are outside of just outside the 30-foot reach, right? The Basilisk right now has a pretty limited sphere of influence, particularly because it's so slow, right? So it would be pretty easy for a player character to stay ahead of the Basilisk and just kind of snipe it from a distance without it ever really being in danger. Yeah, great. So that was kind of what I was thinking for the first problem, like how to give it a little bit more fun with its actions, how to make its turn a little bit more impactful. And then problem number 2 kind of deals with the poison itself. So the bite attack, right, has 2d6 plus 3 piercing damage plus 2d6 poison damage. And that is interesting because it implies the existence of this Basilisk poison. And I'm going to look here and see. It doesn't talk, the text, the like lore doesn't really talk about the poison very much. They don't have a lot of words for the lore, which kind of explains why there's not as much depth. They do really, in an interesting way, talk about its like intestinal fluids and stuff. That like some alchemists are said to know how to process the Basilisk's gullet and fluids contained within. Properly handled, the gullet produces an oil that can return petrified creatures to flesh and life. Yeah. So it's like they talk about some of the internal fluids of the basilisk, but there is no discussion about its poison at all. Why does it have poison teeth? What's going on? What does the poison do? So rather than just kind of stacking on a little bit of damage, which, you know, we have here, and that's fine, I would want to maybe add a poisoned condition and deal with, like, what is the evolutionary reason that this monster has this poison? You know, how does it help it do what it does? If the conceit here, which I think is cool, they talk about, like, it, right, the conceit is that, like, the gaze attack is a way to slow down its prey. Its prey starts to run away. The basilisk looks at it. They turn to stone. The basilisk's strong jaws are able to eat the stone. And then, because there's an oil inside the basilisk that turns the stone back into flesh, it can process it. So it's this great justification for both why it does this, but also then, like, why its stomach acids are able to turn petrified flesh, or petrified, like, stone back into flesh. Right? A great design. Incredible, like, world building stuff there. I love that. But I feel like we could emphasize it a little bit more by having the poison, like, I feel like you either get rid of the poison entirely or you ground the poison a little bit more in the monster concept. So my thought is that there, in addition to the damage, maybe you reduce the damage a little bit, say 2d6 piercing plus 1d6 poison, and then the target has to make a save against a poisoned condition. On a failure, a poisoned creature cannot voluntarily look away from the basilisk. Right? It has to look at it. It's kind of like this mesmeric thing where it's forced to sort of stare at the basilisk. And you can put the poison then on the bite, and you can put the poison maybe even on the tail swipe, and definitely in the, like, poison spit. So if the basilisk can get within range of you and hit you with this poison spit, then you fail your save, now you are forced to look at the basilisk. You can move away from it, but at least when you start your turn and you're within range of the poison spit, you have to make that save, right? So I kind of like that, the evolutionary thinking behind that, right? That, like, they would do this in order to have, like, a way to slow down prey, or a way to catch prey that refuses to look at them, right? It's kind of this, like, adaptation that I like. And then lastly, we have problem number 3, which is the, like, because we have so little lore space here, it feels a little bit like there's only kind of one basilisk encounter you can do, right? You can just kind of run there's a basilisk in this cave, or there's a basilisk guarding this place, or this Medusa has tamed this basilisk, and so, oh no, it's looking at us, what do we do? So I wanted to expand the ecology a little bit in kind of a 4th edition-y way. 4th edition really, like, ran away with this concept of these monsters having all these different forms and iterations and subspecies and stuff, you know, because they're trying to come up with, like, different enemies for you to fight, which makes sense. But at the same time, I feel like they took it, you know, too far. They felt a little bit like Pokemon or something, where it's all these different evolved forms of the same creature. So I like to look at, like, life cycle stuff and say, you know, you look at a lot of animals in the real world, and especially sort of like reptiles and amphibians, you know, they have kind of different forms that they metamorphosize through. So I liked the idea of sort of an immature basilisk, right? If you really wanted to, what you could do is you could, older versions of the basilisk have the greater basilisk, which is just like a bigger, scarier one. You could, you know, make our version of the basilisk with the tail swipe and the rechargeable poison spit be the greater basilisk, keep this one as the standard basilisk, and then design, like, a lesser basilisk. Maybe we'll call it that. That seems like a fun throwaway, a fun reference. That has slightly reduced powers, but maybe has some other advantages. So I'm imagining, like, a low CR, like a 1/4 or something like that, kind of like a hatchling, right? That maybe it's a little bit faster. That if the bigger a basilisk gets, it has that kind of like crocodile movement, right, where it goes slow. That the younger ones are a little quicker, a little more spry, able to move around the battlefield a little quicker. And then rather than a petrifying gaze, if their gaze is still kind of developing, if they have, like, a mesmeric gaze. So the idea with the mesmeric gaze is that it stops you from moving, right? Or maybe you move closer to the basilisk. So the young basilisks will scurry up to you, get you in range of their mesmeric gaze. You fail it, you walk up to the young basilisk, and then the adult basilisk will walk over to the young basilisk and catch them in the gaze or in range of the poison. Right, so it's almost like the greater or the regular basilisk sends out these small little hatchlings to go and find prey, so that way the bigger one can kind of come to it. They work with these, like, little tracers. that was kind of my thinking. If you want to have a slightly more dynamic, more interesting Basilisk encounter that could challenge a party of higher level than just CR3. So those are kind of our tasks. It's to add some multi-attack to the standard Basilisk, add the poison in, and then potentially design a lesser Basilisk that can work as kind of a bird dog to the adult Basilisk. Great. Yeah, so let's dive into the stat block and get to work on it. This might be a shorter episode this week because it feels like it's a simpler monster with not as much going on, but we will dive right in. Okay, so multi-attack's the first thing we're going to do. We're here on Tetracube and their stat block generator, which again, I think is one of the best websites there is for this kind of a thing, because it does this great like algorithmic thing where you can basically generate your own stat block that looks great and looks very official. And I use it all the time, so I recommend checking out Tetracube's D&D 5e stat block generator. It's awesome. Okay, great. So we're going to keep a lot of the basic stuff. You know, the name and the size and the type and the hit points and AC and all of that is fine. It does feel like the AC is a little bit low, but that's okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go down here into actions, and we're going to add multi-attack. So that shouldn't be too difficult to do. Use preset. The Basilisk can make 2 attacks, one with its bite and one with its tail swipe. One with its bite and one with its tail swipe. All right, so let's add that action. So now I've got multi-attack in there. Update the stat block. There you go. Yeah, it's a weird monster because it might actually be better to do it as a column. Yeah. Because Petrifying Gaze is just so huge, it's very hard to like balance it. I did it as 2 columns here because I thought that sort of it looked a little bit better, right? But yeah, I kind of think it's cleaner with just the 1 column. Great, and then we're gonna do, let's see, we will do the tail swipe ability. So tail swipe, which does kind of feel like a Pokemon attack. Oh right, you have to do this first. I assume that there's like, yeah, you just do attack, legendary action. Okay. I think it's strength based because it's got the good strength. We're gonna call this tail swipe. So the question with the tail swipe is that, like, you know, it might administer some poison, but does it do something else? You know, do like tail attacks traditionally have some other form? You know, I wonder. Let me look up another monster with a tail attack and see, like, should it push you away? Should it, you know, knock you prone? Maybe, yeah, maybe it knocks you prone. Like it deals slightly less damage, like 1d8 maybe, and then the target has to make a... Well, the trick with that, right, is that, like... No, like dragons just have a tail attack that just deals damage. Yeah, so let's just do that. Oh, you know, here's what we'll do. We'll do... It doesn't deal poison damage, we'll say. But strength attack to hit, I think its reach is 5 feet, right? 1 target. It hits strength, and tail seems to be d8, is what I'm saying. So 1d8 piercing damage. Plus 1d6 bludgeoning damage. Yeah, I like that. Maybe we don't put the poison on the tail. I kind of think it's cool that the poison just comes from inside, right? Yeah. So it's like it can. Well, yeah. Then in that case, let's do 1d8 piercing damage, and the target must make a DC 12 strength check, or fall, or be knocked prone, Yeah, I think that's better, because if we're not going to do the poison on it, which I kind of think makes sense, if we're saying the poison is like an internalized thing, that then what is the function of the tail? It's to slow you, right? If it can get to you and knock you over, then you have to spend half your movement getting up, and then you can probably only move about 15 feet away from it. You know, like it makes it easier for the Basilisk to chase you down if it can knock you to the ground first. Yeah, I love that. Okay, cool. And then let's put the poison. So great, that's the first one. That's its, oh right, we have a poison spit attack we want to do. So I wanted to look at the Ankheg, because I think the Ankheg has the kind of, the thing we're looking for. I'm going to say 5-6 on this. rather than just 6, which is what I think the Ankeg's recharge is. Acid spray. The Ankeg spits acid in a line that is 30 feet long and 5 feet wide, provided it has no... So I think this is not a line. I think this is like a targeted attack. I think it like a cobra spits it at one person, right? So rather than like kind of a long, like a sprinkler effect, it's like a gob of poison. So I think it's an attack, a ranged weapon attack, using its strength, right? Oh, sure, of course. Poison spit. Recharge 5/6. So what do we think is an appropriate range here? Do we do like 30, 45 maybe? That like it can hit you outside of that range, but it's a little bit harder to do. Yeah, I like that. What I like about that too, because I think 30-60 is too far, but 30-45 is like it can go a little bit further, but not super far. So I don't think it's based on strength damage. I think it's just like a set amount. What do we think is appropriate there? Because it's a recharge 5/6, so it should be hefty. I'm kind of thinking about taking a cue from the Ankeg, which does 3d6 acid damage. Now the Ankeg does 3d6 acid damage to every creature in the line. So it's a little bit like, you know, presumably you could get away even with like a 4d6 on a recharge 6. But this is a 5/6, and it's one target, and it's got the poison condition that we talked about. So I think it's easier to just say, yeah, hold on a minute. So I think we can just do 2d or 3d6 poison damage, right? No saving throw here, but then they take the poison damage, and the target must succeed. And the target must succeed on a DC 12. Another Constitution saving throw against poison. Yeah. On a failure, the creature is poisoned, or the target is poisoned. And oh yeah, it's gonna be like must succeed in a DC 12 Constitution saving throw, or become poisoned, or be poisoned for 1 minute. Yeah, poisoned for 1 minute. Did I spell poisoned wrong? Yeah, okay. If I did, they would have caught it. A poisoned creature cannot look away from the basilisk. Great. Yeah, I think that's right. Poison spit. Yeah, 10 poison damage. Pretty severe. Yeah, I dig it. So not only do you then have disadvantage on stuff, right, but that feels a little meatier, even just like looking at it, right? Yeah, I love that. So the only other change that we need to make to the basilisk is we need to add the poison damage, like the poison effect, into the bite. Yeah, okay. So this might be a quick episode, guys. And the target must succeed on a DC 12 Constitution saving throw, or become poisoned. A poisoned creature cannot look away from the basilisk. Cool. Action. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So that's the updated basilisk. That was very painless. Yeah, it's there's just no way to do like an attractive like distribution of that. You know what I mean? Like Petrifying Gaze is so big. If you do it that way, right? Yeah, ugly. So it's got to be one column. Yeah, there's your basilisk. Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna save this. Love it. I'm gonna view image. There we go, cool. So I've got them both saved. Lovely. And now we're going to do the lesser basilisk. So I think I want to use the giant lizard as a template for that. CR1. CR1 quarter. Okay. It's funny because, like, it's got 12 armor class, which is the same. I think it's bigger than a basilisk, so that will have to change. But yeah, it's got substantially fewer hit points. It's got like 20 hit points, which seems right. 30-foot speed, 30-foot climb is kind of interesting too, right? I think mechanically it's pretty good actually, like stat wise. I'm gonna lower its strength a little bit. I don't think it should be quite that strong. So let's go in here. Let's say that it is obviously called a lesser basilisk. We're gonna call it medium. No, we're gonna call it small, right? If the basilisk is medium, then the lesser basilisk is small. Unaligned, yep, because it's just a creature. So I'm gonna reduce the strength down to 12, and I think we're gonna crank that dexterity up to 14. I kind of even like the idea that the lesser basilisk is like a little bit harder to hit, right? I think it's got 30-foot speed and 30-foot climb. I think it's interesting. Maybe say 20-foot climb. Yeah, okay. And that's all fine. What else does the basilisk? It has passive perception, dark vision, 30 feet. Yeah, I think that's all good. Well, let's reduce its wisdom down, because the basilisk has 8 wisdom. I kind of think that the lesser basilisk should maybe even have worse wisdom than that. Maybe have 6 wisdom. And yeah, 5 charisma is good, because it's like a younger version of the basilisk. So yeah, okay, that's all good. And then let's get rid of these abilities, right? And let's give it Petrifying Gaze. I wonder if that's in here, but we're going to change it to Mesmeric Gaze. Petrifying Gaze, okay. Use preset. All right, so this is going to be called Mesmeric Gaze. If a creature starts its turn within X feet of the basilisk, of the lesser basilisk, we'll just say basilisk. That's fine. So what do we think the distance should be on this? Because they can move further. Do we shorten the distance? Because that, it feels like that kind of like defeats the purpose of it. Maybe we shorten the distance a little bit, but we extend their movement. So they can move 30 feet, right? They can scamper a little faster, and then they can get up to you, but rather than it being 30 feet away, it's like 20 feet away. So it's a little bit shorter. Yeah, if a creature starts to turn within 20 feet of the basilisk, and the two of them can see each other, the basilisk can force the creature to make a DC. Yeah, what's this DC? So it would be, yeah, what is it based? Is it based on Constitution here? 8 plus 2 is 10. Yeah, it must be based on Constitution. So let's make the save is a little easier. It's a DC 11 Constitution saving throw if the basilisk isn't incapacitated. Do we maybe make it like a Wisdom saving throw? Yeah, I kind of think that's interesting if it's challenging a different ability score, because it's about gazing at them, right? The monster isn't incapacitated. On a failed save, the creature magically begins... Nope, the creature is... Yeah, boy, how do we do this? I'm gonna look up the Harpy, maybe, and see if we can get that. Or, ooh, what about Hypnotic Pattern? Maybe that's the spell we should be looking at. Yeah. Okay, Hypnotic Pattern. Hypnotic Pattern says... the pattern appears for a moment and vanishes. Each creature in the area who sees the pattern must make a Wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the creature becomes charmed for the duration. While charmed by this spell, the creature is incapacitated and has a speed of 0. So I don't think it's that. I don't think they're incapacitated, but I like the charm thing. The creature is charmed for 1 minute. For 1 minute. While charmed, while charmed by the basilisk, the creature, I don't think they're incapacitated, right? In 4th edition, you would say that they're immobilized. You know? I think incapacitated is too strong for a CR4. But it's like they cannot move. right? They cannot move and must continue looking at the basilisk. Yeah, must spend their turn. Boy, the wording on this is always tricky. Let me look at turn undead. Because turn undead is interesting in that, like, it creates a fear-like effect, but isn't actually fear. Turn undead. Turn undead. Let's see. Wisdom saving throw. Creature fails a saving throw. Its turn for 1 minute or until it takes any damage. A turn creature must spend its turns trying to move as far away from you as it can, and it can't willingly move to a space within 30 feet of you. So, the creature can't willingly move away from the basilisk. Cannot willingly move away, move or look away from the basilisk. Yep, there we go. For 1 minute or until it takes damage. Till the creature takes damage. Yeah. Creature that isn't surprised can avert its eyes to avoid the saving throw at the start of its turn. If it does so, it can't see the basilisk until the start of its next turn, when it can avert its eyes again. If it looks at the basilisk in the meantime, it must immediately make the save. Yeah, there you go. And then add ability. Okay. If a creature starts its turn within 20 feet of the basilisk and the two of them can see each other, the basilisk can force the creature to make a DC 11 wisdom saving throw if the basilisk isn't incapacitated. On a failed save, the creature is charmed for 1 minute or until the creature takes damage. While charmed by the basilisk, the creature can't willingly move or look away from the basilisk. A creature that isn't surprised can avert its eyes to avoid... to avoid its saving throw at the start of its turn. If it does so, it can't see the basilisk until the start of its next turn, when it can avert its eyes again. If it looks at the basilisk in the meantime, it must immediately make the save. We forgot about this part. Does the basilisk have that? It's a reflection thing? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I love this too. If it sees its reflection within 30 feet of it in bright light, it mistakes itself for a rival and targets itself with its gaze. I love the phrasing of that. The basilisk sees its reflection within 20 feet of it in bright light. It mistakes itself for a rival. How's it phrased? And targets itself with its gaze. So yeah, the idea of it just like mesmerizing itself. Horrifying. Oh yeah, add ability. And then update stat block. There we go. Okay, so the bite then, I don't think the poison has the effect, but I don't mind it having like a splash of poison damage. So yeah, +4 to hit, 1d8 plus 2. Let's maybe change that to 1d6 plus 2, just because that's the amount of damage. Yeah, 1d6 plus 1 piercing damage, plus 1d6 poison damage. Yeah. Plus 1d6 poison damage. Nice. Okay. So add action. Update stat block. There we go. The Lesser Basilisk. Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, honestly, guys, I think that's the Basilisk. This was a pretty simple one. It didn't require kind of like the full retool that the Banshee did. But I do think we have substantially improved the monster in a lot of ways. Yeah, cool. Creature starts to turn within 20 feet of the Basilisk. So let me save the stat block and view the image. This is a short one. It's only about a half an hour stream. But that is okay. Honestly, like a lot of this, it's cool to come on the stream and it's cool to talk to people, but like a lot of it is that this is like me carving out time in my like week to make this monster, so that way it's ready for our patrons on Sunday. You know, it's like if I make it a stream, then I kind of am like legally obligated to come and do it. Great, so that's the Basilisk, everybody. Quick and dirty and painless. Thank you for coming and watching. If you enjoyed this stream, we have a lot more other content that you can find on the channel. If you like and subscribe below, you'll get notified about that content. Yeah, we do adventure prep streams on Tuesdays. We have the Monster Workshop here on Thursdays, which we're kind of trying out, and then we have on Sundays we have a world building stream. Plus Wednesdays I usually post my thoughts from the table. This week was kind of an interesting one. It was about prompting rolls, and should players be rolling before the Dungeon Master prompts them to roll. So go check that video out. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this content, you can also find us on Twitter and Discord and Patreon. Links are all below. Check those out. I am a professional Dungeon Master, so if you enjoy the content that I make, you can find me on my website, pro-dm.net, and you can hire me to run an adventure for you. I can run an adventure, I can run a campaign, I can do all kinds of stuff. Check me out there on my website. Thanks so much for coming out for this really quick little stream while we talked about this monster. I'm excited to make it. If you are a patron, by the way, at the $1 level, and you come and join our campaign, you will get weekly access to these monsters as soon as I am done with them, as well as a huge host of bonus content that I have made over the past 5 or 6 years doing this. It's probably not 5 or 6 years, but boy, does it sure feel like it. You know, it might be 5 years since we did the first season of XP, which was in 2016. But it's not been 5 or 6 years since Patreon. That's probably only been about 3 or 4. But still, a lot of content that you can check out there. Great. So we'll be back, I think, on Sunday then for the world building stream. I'm not sure what we're going to do this Sunday. We did monsters last week, which is kind of a go-to. I'm trying to think if there's like something cool we can work on next week. Maybe we'll do dragons or something. I'm not sure. We'll figure it out. But thank you so much for coming and checking this video out, and there'll be another one next week. But until then, check out the podcast. Drops on Sunday, and happy adventuring. Thanks, everybody. I gotta find my video capture. There it goes. Bye, guys.